Episode 1. Box Cutter. The last season finished off with Jesse murdering Gail, and now Mike and Victor have captured Jesse and are holding him and Walter hostage in the lab until Gus arrives to deal with them. Victor tells them that he's been watching them cook and he can do it himself, and they don't need them anymore, and he's going to inform Gus of this. Skylar starts freaking out when she can't get a hold of Walter, so she starts thinking the worst, and she informs Saul of Walter's disappearance, and this freaks Saul out so much that he hires a personal bodyguard. Elsewhere, Hank has finally made it home from the hospital, but he's not himself and he mainly works on his mineral collection and is mean to Marie. Gus finally arrives to the lab and sees Victor trying to cook, so then he puts on a cooking uniform and out of nowhere, kills Victor with a box cutter. He then gets back into his suit and tells Walter and Jesse to get back to work, but making it known if they screw up one more time, he won't hesitate to kill them. The episode closes with the police investigating Gail's murder, and we see a notebook on the coffee table that reads, Lab Notes. Episode 2. 38 Snub. Walter knows he is going to have to kill Gus before Gus can kill him, so he buys a revolver for his protection. Walter receives a visit from Mike and Victor's replacement, Tyrus, and they tell him Walter will never see Gus in person again and their relationship will always go through Mike. Jesse, still dealing with the aftermath of killing Gail, throws a huge party at his house to get his mind off of everything. Andrea visits Jesse and is worried about him, and he isn't in the mood to talk to her, but he hands her a boatload of cash and tells her to take care of Brock's future. He's just in a total funk, and who knows when he will get out of it. Meanwhile, Walter has finally agreed with Skylar to buy the old car wash he used to work at, but when she goes to make an offer to the owner declines immediately because he despises Walter. Speaking of Walter, Walter finds Mike at a bar, and he tells Mike he wants to kill Gus, because if Gus can kill Victor that easily, he can kill Mike just like that too. Mike doesn't feel like he is in any danger with Gus, so he beats Walter up for even having the idea, and he leaves. Episode 3. Open House. Walter is furious with Gus for having motion-detecting software cameras put up in the lab so Gus can see every little move that they do while cooking. Skylar goes to Saul and she tells him that Walter has agreed to buy the car wash to launder their money through, but since the owner won't do business with her, she needs Saul's help to secure the business. Saul has one of his guys pretend to be an EPA rep who threatens to shut down the business over contaminants, and after some consideration, the owner finally decides to sell the car wash to Skylar. Meanwhile, Jesse continues his all-day, everyday partying, and he's throwing money away like he has an unlimited amount. Marie, being unhappy that Hank is still on bed rest, and he's being super mean to her, goes shopping and gets back to her shoplifting ways at an open house. She is caught and arrested, so she has no choice but to call Hank to get her out. When Hank arrives, he pulls some strings and gets her out of being charged, and a little later, a colleague points out Gail's murder to him, and he shows him the lab notebook that they found on his coffee table, and the guy thinks Hank will want to see what is inside. Episode 4. Bullet Points. Walter and Skylar plan to tell Hank that all of his medical bills have been paid off, and they paid for them with Walter's gambling winnings. They meticulously rehearse what they are going to say because they don't want to tip Hank off that they are really used Walter's drug money. When they go and talk to him, Hank tells Walter about Gail's murder and how he believes Gail was Heisenberg, and he was the one cooking the blue meth. Hank came to this conclusion after looking at Gail's lab notebook, and there were a bunch of notes about a new chemical process to cook meth, which he believes is the blue sky recipe. There is a note in the notebook that says WW my star, my perfect silence, and Hank wants to know what is significant about this line. Hank jokingly says WW could stand for Walter White, and Walter smiles and says, "You got me," in a sarcastic way, and they both laugh. Walter tells him it is probably the poet Walt Whitman. Meanwhile, at one of Jesse's parties, he is shocked to learn that $70,000 was stolen from his house, but Mike is able to quickly recover it. Mike notices Jesse's apathy about the loss of his money, and he reports to Gus that Jesse's lack of care and professionalism could be detrimental to their criminal organization, and he's a problem. The episode closes with Mike driving an inscrutable Jesse to an unknown location. Episode 5. Shotgun. Mike tells Walter that Jesse is safe, and he just wants to try and get Jesse out of this funk. They drive around doing multiple collections around the state, and on the last one, a man appears with a shotgun, and Jesse is able to subdue the man before he hurts anyone. Later that day, we learn that this was a setup by Mike and Gus to try and increase Jesse's low self-esteem and get his mood back up and feel like he accomplished something. Skylar and Walter officially purchased the car wash, and after doing so, Skylar tells Walter she wants him to move back into the house for good. They then go to a family dinner, and Hank tells them that he's going to let the Heisenberg case rest as he believes the cook is now dead, and that was his goal in the end. To get the cook out of the picture so the blue meth will be off the street. When Hank goes on about how Gail was a genius for the recipe, Walter gets upset because he doesn't like someone else getting the credit for his product, and his ego is smashed. Walter drunkenly says Gail probably got the recipe from someone else, and the genius is still at large. The whole time, Skylar completely freaking out Walter is slipping out so much information, and Hank might put two and two together. Hank doesn't seem to put the clues together yet, and when he gets to work the following day, he discovers a Los Palos Hermanos napkin that was with Gail's belongings. Episode 6. Cornered. Skylar is not happy with Walter after his actions the night prior, and she tells Walter he should just turn himself in. She knows he is probably in danger with all his drinking recently, and she would rather him being in jail instead of dead. Walter gets super but hurt and lashes out at Skylar that he is not in danger. He is the danger and the one people should be afraid of. He's finally turning full Heisenberg and leaving the innocent chemistry teacher persona behind, and Skylar is frightened of this. She then packs up and leaves with Holly. Walter meets with Jesse, and Walter tells Jesse Gus is trying to drive a wedge between them and to not let him because that is what he wants. Walter says that is the reason for Mike driving him around and trying to cheer him up, because if Jesse gets on Gus's good side, Gus won't have a need for Walter anymore because Jesse can cook the recipe just as good as Walter can now. That afternoon, Mike removes Jesse from the lab once again, and they go for a drive together, and Walter knows what is really going on here. Later that day, Gus tells Jesse he is doing a great job when he goes on his errands runs with Mike, and he sees something in Jesse, further bolstering the trust in their relationship. Elsewhere, Walter buys Walt Jr. a new Dodge Challenger, but Skylar orders him to take it back before he completely blows their cover, and she's getting super irritated with her husband. Episode 7. Problem Dog. Instead of returning the car as Skylar told him to, Walter goes for a joyride and ends up crashing the car. He then blows it up and tells Saul to cover his tracks. Skylar is going over the books for their laundering, and when she sees how much money Walter has been making recently, she doesn't know if she can clean that much through their car wash without drawing a bunch of attention from the IRS. She believes they need to buy another business. Meanwhile, Walter speaks with Jesse, and he wants Jesse's help in killing Gus, and it takes some convincing, but Jesse eventually agrees to help Walt with the plan. Walter gets some ricin and he puts it into a cigarette, and he wants Jesse to give it to Gus when they are together one day since Walter never sees Gus anymore. When Jesse goes with Gus to a cartel meeting down in Mexico, Jesse has the opportunity to kill Gus, but decides against it because he doesn't want more blood on his hands, even if it means Gus killing Walter. Hank and Walt Jr. decide to go out for some lunch, and they go to Gus's chicken restaurant, and Hank is able to sneak Gus's fingerprints so he can test them. The Los Palos napkin and Gus's belongings led him here, and now he suspects Gus is involved in the drug trade. When he gets to the office the following day, he tells Gomez and his boss that he believes Gus is the head of a large meth operation, and he's the one distributing the blue meth as he found a match for Gus's fingerprints at Gail's apartment. Episode 8. Hermanos. The episode opens with a flashback to Gus visiting Hector in the nursing home and telling him that both of his nephews are dead. Gus and Hector absolutely despise each other, and Gus takes any opportunity he can to see Hector suffer. In present day, Gus is brought into the DEA office for questioning, but Gus is smart and he knows how to talk his way out of things. Gus tells them that Gail was a recipient of a college scholarship he awarded back in the day, and he called Gus over to his apartment to ask him for money as he was broke. Most of the investigators seem to buy his story because they see Gus as this innocent chicken restaurant manager, but Hank still remains suspicious. Hank goes to Walter and he wants Walter's help in planting an illegal tracking device on Gus's car. Walter then informs Mike of what Hank told him to do, and Mike tells Walter to plant it on Gus's orders. While this is all going on, Walter is still trying to convince Jesse to give the rice and cigarette to Gus, and it will eliminate a lot of their problems. Walter doesn't want Gus to be arrested because he knows Gus would sell him out in a heartbeat, so that's why he wants him dead pronto. Gus visits Hector again, and we see a flashback to 1989 where Gus and his boyfriend Max first met Don Eladio, and they wanted to sell Max's meth product to the cartel. Hector was also present for the meeting before he was wheelchair-bound. Don Eladio thought he was being played, so he ordered Hector to kill Max right in front of Gus, which broke Gus's heart. This seems to be the reason for Gus's hatred towards Hector in present day, and Gus tells Hector his day will come soon, just not yet. Episode 9. Bug. Remember Ted? Skylar's boss and lover from the last season? Well, he's back, and he reveals to Skylar that he is being investigated for tax fraud, and he wants Skylar's help in any way she can. He has fines totaling $600,000, and if he doesn't pay it back soon, he's going to go to jail. Skylar knew this was happening when she first started working for him, but she was hooking up with him and couldn't bring herself to turn him in. She just has a fine taste in men, both criminals. Skylar knows Ted is desperate, so she goes to the crawl space under their home, where Walter has been hiding their money, and she uses the money to give to Ted to pay off the IRS without Walt's permission. Gus's GPS tracker doesn't lead Hank anywhere because, of course, Gus was aware of it, so Hank decides to investigate Gus's depot. But Gus was thinking 2 steps ahead and had Jesse move all the product out of it before Hank even got there. Meanwhile, Gus is going through a dispute with the cartel as well, because the blue meth is taking over the New Mexico drug scene. And since Gus is producing it himself, that means less money going to their cartel, and they want their business to succeed as well. Gus gives into their demand to split territory, and he tells Jesse that he will be going down to Mexico and showing their cooks how to make the blue meth. Later on, Jesse tells Walter he can't kill Gus because Gus is treating him well, and this causes them to get into a fight. Episode 10. Salud. Skylar and Saul get together, and they want to help Ted come up with a story to where he got all of the cash that Skylar gave him. Saul says they can just say inheritance. But when Skylar sees that Ted used the money she gave him to go buy a new Mercedes instead of pay off the IRS, he says that he wants to get his business back up and running first. And then he will use the rest of the money to hire a good tax attorney that will negotiate a better deal for him with the IRS, and Skylar is irate. It is Walt Jr.'s birthday, and his father misses the party because he was in a fight with Jesse, and when he goes to check on his dad, he finds Walter all bloody and bruised up. He takes care of him, and when Walter wakes up, he apologizes to his son for missing his party, and Jr. forgives him. Gus, Mike, and Jesse all fly to Mexico together to introduce Jesse to the cooks so he can show them the recipe. The first cook goes well, and afterwards, Don Eladio tells Jesse that he now belongs to the cartel, and he's happy to have him on. While celebrating later, Gus poisons Don Eladio and all of his men with some spiked tequila, and he finally got his revenge all these years later after they killed Max right in front of him. Mike gets shot trying to flee, but Jesse saves his life, and they are able to escape. Episode 11. Crawl Space. After successfully getting away, Gus thanks Jesse for helping them out back there, and Jesse uses this opportunity to ask Gus not to kill Walter, and he knows that is his next move. Back in New Mexico, Saul has a few of his goonies try and scare Ted into paying the IRS because he still refuses to do so, and after they start chasing him, Ted trips and hits his head, knocking himself out. Walter learns that Jesse has been cooking without him down in Mexico and sharing their recipe, and Walter begs him to stop because he knows the more people that know the recipe, the easier it will be for Gus to take him out. Jesse says he has to look out for himself now, and he begged Gus not to kill him and thinks he will honor Jesse's wishes. Later on, Gus takes Walter out into the desert and tells Walter that he is fired and his services will no longer be needed. Gus tells Walter if he tries interfering with their business one more time, he will kill Hank, his kids, his wife, and all other family members Walter has. When Walter gets home, he wants to get his family and leave before Gus can hurt any of them, but is stunned when he sees his crawl space money gone, and he suffers a complete meltdown when Skylar says she gave the money to Ted. Marie then calls Skylar and says the DEA just received an anonymous tip that Hank's family is in danger, and this was obviously Walter's doing, and Hank is put under protection. Episode 12. End Times. Skylar, Walt Jr. and Holly are all put under the protection of the DEA in Hank's home after receiving the tip in the last episode. Hank sends Gomez to go search the laundromat that the tip said to check out, but Gomez finds nothing when he goes there because he doesn't even know there is a basement, as it is well hidden. With this happening, Gus now realizes Walter is interfering with his business exactly as he told him not to do, and Gus tells Jesse Walter has to be killed. It's the only way. Jesse refuses to cook if Gus kills Walter. Jesse then receives a call from Andrea that Brock is really sick and the doctors have no idea what is wrong with him, and then Jesse looks in his cigarette box, and the vial of ricin that was in there is no longer there. Jesse thinks Walter somehow gave the ricin to Brock to get back at him, and Jesse goes to confront Walter about this. But Walter says he has no idea how that happened, and he says it was probably Gus trying to frame Walter, and hopefully Jesse would then be okay with having Walter killed. The manipulation works and Jesse agrees with Walter that Gus must now be killed. Gus arrives at the hospital and demands that Jesse get back to work and cook, but Jesse refuses to leave as he is beyond angry at Gus for thinking he poisoned a little kid, just like he had the kid murdered in the previous season as well. While they are talking, Walter strapped a bomb to Gus's car in the parking lot, and when Gus gets outside and about to get in, he decides to abandon the vehicle sensing Walter's plan. Episode 13. Face Off. Season Finale. Detectives question Jesse about Brock, but then Saul shows up and acts as Jesse's representation, and Jesse is allowed to leave as there is no evidence, as they can't even discover what is actually wrong with Brock. Walt, Jesse, and Saul then come up with another plan in hopes of killing Gus once and for all, as they believe Gus out of the picture would make things easier for all of them. Walter decides to let Hector into his plan as well, because he knows how much Hector hates Gus. Later that day, Jesse is kidnapped from the hospital and forced to go cook. Hector asks to meet with the DEA later that day, and Gus catches wind of this and believes Hector is finally going to rat on him, so Gus goes to personally kill Hector before the meeting with the DEA. Gus calls Hector a coward for being a rat, and that goes against everything they value. And then Hector starts rapidly pressing his little bell, and Gus realizes this was a trap, and then a bomb that was strapped to Hector's chair goes off, killing himself and Tyrus instantly, and blowing half of Gus's face off before Gus eventually succumbs to his injuries and dies. Walter then rescues Jesse from the lab, and they destroy it. When Jesse gets back to the hospital, he discovers it wasn't ricin found in Brock's system. It was a lily-of-the-valley plant, and he's going to be all right. But now Jesse knows Gus didn't try to kill Brock. Walter then calls Skylar and says that they won and it's over. The season ends showing us a flower pot in Walter's backyard that is the lily-of-the-valley plant, so it was Walter who poisoned Brock, not Gus. It was all a part of Walter's plan to turn Jesse against Gus. And that is it for Season 4. One more season, so I hope you check that one out too when I get it uploaded. If it is already uploaded, there will be a direct link on the screen to click. Thanks for watching.